Welcome to what might be my most requested tutorial ever. Here's an exceptionally fast and super low poly way to make your characters highly expressive by giving them posable and animatable eyes. And before we get into the tutorial, let me show you what our final outcome is going to look like. It's going to be something like this, where we have two bones right here, one from the left eye and one for the right eye. I can use these controllers to move them up and down, left and right, even in and out if I wanted to. And if you'd like to study this setup and how it works, I'm going to include below this video a free download on my Gumroad page for an example file that will look just like this, except it'll just be the head, won't be the whole body, and you can use that as a guide and reference point for studying how this was set up. But in this video, we're going to break down every single step of that so you can learn how to add it to your own characters. And to do this, we'll be starting from this point right here. We already have this character fully rigged with a separate body and face texture. So this is our character's body texture. This is what our character's body texture looks like. And this right here is our character's face texture. We're going to work from this starting point and transform our character into having fully animatable, posable eyes. This is going to be a pretty advanced tutorial, so if you need help refreshing your character modeling or UV unwrapping skills, I'll link my character modeling tutorial series playlist below this video, which will teach you how to do that and make this exact character and a whole lot more. And I'm also assuming you're not only using the Eevee render engine, but you're also going down to color management and setting your view transform to standard so that the colors on our textures line up with our colors in Blender. The first step in this process is going to be making the eye white, which is basically right here, transparent, and adding the iris texture all on its own to our face texture. So we're going to take this face texture and do that to it. So I'm going to open up my face texture in Photoshop here. Now, if you don't have Photoshop, you can use a Photoshop clone called Photo P. If you want to follow along with this tutorial, you can use that instead. But for my case here, I'm going to use Photoshop. Any painting program like Clip Studio Paint will work for this. I just prefer using Photoshop personally. And I'm not going to go into too much detail here because this is not a Photoshop tutorial, but essentially I'm going to make a new mask here on this texture. Then I'm going to make my brush big and get rid of this final facial expression because that's where we're going to put our irises. Then I'm going to zoom in here by using the zoom tool. Then I press L to use the polygonal lasso tool. Then I'm going to select around my eye here. So I'm going to make a selection around the white of my eye. So basically, the selection I want to make here is everything except the eyelash. So all of the eye white, including the iris, you want to select just like this. You can see the marching ants here kind of outlining it. And I want to do the same on this side. So I'm going to hold Shift, another selection with my polygonal lasso tool, and select different parts of my face here like so. And there we go. Now I'm going to zoom out here by pressing Z to use the zoom tool. Then we're going to press Control plus X, then Control plus V. And that didn't work because I was on the wrong layer. So I'm going to undo that. Make sure I have my image selected here. Then I'm going to press Control plus X, then Control plus V. Like so. So now that I've pressed Control plus X, then Control plus V, I've essentially cut and then pasted my selection. Then I'm going to clean up my selection here by locking the transparent pixels here. Again, I'm going very fast because I don't want this to be a tutorial for how to use Photoshop. I just wanted to include this for people who might not be sure exactly how this process would work in their desired photo app of choice. I'm just going to do this really quick because this is going to make it look a lot better in Blender. It might seem like a subtle thing, but it makes a big difference when you clean up your pixels like this beforehand. So now that I've cleaned up this section, I'm going to go over to my other layer I just created here where it's just the irises. Then I'm going to get rid of everything that is not my iris here. So the eye white, this eye shadowed part, I'm going to get rid of all of this. I'm going to start off by doing that with the magic wand tool. So I'm going to click right here, delete, delete, delete. Then I'm going to switch over to my polygonal lasso tool like so. And I'm going to select around my eye. Make sure all this stuff is deleted. Make sure all this stuff is deleted. Like so. And I'll do that here as well. So now I just have my irises isolated like this, and I'm going to keep both of them here because I can tell just by looking right here, for example, these are asymmetrical, which is great. I feel like that adds a lot of life to my models, is keeping them asymmetrical like that. I like that look, but you could also just mirror one iris if you prefer across both of yours. That's totally fine, but in my case here, I'm just going to scooch this over like so. So now We have the white of our eye and the iris on our face here transparent, which is fantastic. We need to do that for this to work. And now we have our irises isolated into the side here in our texture sheet, which is perfect. We also need that to start off with. We can see that all the pixels behind our iris here are actually transparent by looking at this checkered pattern. That means that they're transparent. And I have this already saved on my computer as a PSD, so I'm just going to press Ctrl+S to save this as PSD, which is the file format I'd recommend you use when you're making characters like this for the quickest workflow. If you're using a third-party photo application like Clipstation Paint or Photoshop, highly recommend just save them as PSD. But if you don't have that option, just like in Photopea, for example, I don't think it has that option. You can just go to File, Export, or File, Save As. So now that that's done, we're going to go back to Blender here. I'm already using my texture here. It's a ready material. If you don't know how to do that, please, by all means, make sure to check out my character modeling tutorial playlist because we do talk about this stuff, especially for that last video. But I'm going to make sure I have this in the image editor active. Then I'm going to press Alt+R. After I press Alt+R on my keyboard, which is, Alt+R right there, you're going to see that this becomes transparent right here. And over here, this becomes transparent as well. All the background behind those pixels, which is fantastic, right? However, we're going to notice an issue. This is not transparent in Blender yet. And the reason for that is it's not set up in our material properly yet. So I'm going to go back to object mode, select our face object here, and make sure that I have the shader editor here. You might have the timeline, for example, in this window, or you might have any window at all. If you don't have any window at all, you can drag one up from the bottom here. But in my case here, I'm just going to click right here on this panel and switch this over to the shader editor. Or you could press plus, go to general, and then go to the shading workspace if you want to load up that right here, like so. But in my case here, I already have that panel down there. So I'm just going to use this setup. Now to fix this problem where this is not actually transparent in our material, it's only transparent in our image in Blender, all we need to do is, I already have this set up using Principled BSDF. So if you just have your image in your material here, this is my face material specifically. This is not my body material, which is right here. This is my face material. All you need to do is spawn in a Principled BSDF and make sure that your image texture is plugged into the color node and that the BSDF is plugged into the material output node, like that. So it's very, very simple setup. Then you want to do the alpha output from your PSD or your PNG or whatever material format type you have that supports transparency. You want to take the alpha output from that and put that into the input, the alpha input of your Principled BSDF. And now that we've done that, you can see that our material here actually supports transparency, which is fantastic. I also want to make this an emission. So I'm going to drag out the color output into the color input of the emission on this Principled BSDF, which essentially will make it perfectly shaded and accurate to the colors I'm painting in Photoshop at the cost of not actually receiving light information, but this is the look I prefer, so that's what I'm going to do here. You don't have to do this step, but this is what I prefer to do for my models, and I'm going to make the strength 1. Then I'm going to press up here, so the top right of viewport shading. I'm going to go to that final viewport shading mode, which is rendered. Then I'm going to click up here and click off scene lights in scene world, and I'm going to set strength to 0. So now it looks fantastic. That looks exactly the same way it does in Photoshop. The lighting is 1:1. The rest of this looks terrible. And to fix that, I'm gonna go to my body texture and plug this into emission and set that to 1. And now that looks great. So that's fantastic. This is exactly how I like things to look, is like 1:1 translation from the colors I have in Photoshop into the colors I have in Blender. So now how do we actually get this character's irises and the white of the eye behind the eyes? Because you can see right now, we're just looking into this character's, the back of their head model, basically. So how do we fix that? So that's actually not too hard. All we need to do is press tab to go into edit mode, press 3 to make sure we're on face select both of these faces. So click this face, shift click this face, then press shift plus D, then left click to confirm that duplicates those faces. Then I'm gonna press P on my keyboard, so P, to do separate by selection to make this a separate object. Go back to object mode, click on this new object, press tab to go into edit mode, press A to select all, press G and then Y to move this back into our model's head a little bit. Then I'm going to make sure that this window I have on the left here is actually the UV editor. So I'm gonna click up here, click UV editor. I could also just press U on my keyboard. It looks identical to the image editor. It's very easy to confuse those, but no, you want the UV editor. Then press A to select all the faces we have on this model in the UV editor. Then I'm going to drag this over to somewhere on my texture map that is just white pixels. So that's pressing G to move it over, and I'm moving my mouse and S to scale. It's the exact same controls as regular Blender. And I'm just going to make this just white pixels, nothing else. If you have no white pixels on your face texture, by all means, feel free to add them. It can be literally like 1 pixel in a corner. It can be extremely small. It doesn't matter. But in my case here, I already have white pixels because that's what I want my white of my eye. I want it to be white. So that's what I'm going to do in this case here. Then I'm going to press / this button on your keyboard right next to right shift to isolate just this model. And I'm going to even rename this model we just duplicated from our original model, and I'm going to call it eye white. Then I'm going to press 3, making sure that I'm on face select. I'm going to shift click on both of these faces, then we'll press E to extrude, like so. And it doesn't need to be that much, but you can see if this is clipping into your model or not by pressing / again. And then you can even turn on X-ray by pressing Alt+Z. No, it's not clipping at all. Press G+Y. Doesn't need to go this far back, but may as well. All right. Then I'm going to isolate that again by pressing / on my keyboard. Then I'm going to turn off X-ray because that's confusing. I'm going to press C, then solid, so I can actually see what I'm doing with this model, because when everything's flat shaded, it's kind of hard to 3D model. Then I'm going to click on both of these faces in the front, shift click on both of them, delete faces. Then I'm going to press 2 to go to edge select, click on this edge, shift click this edge, F to fill the gap between those edges. So I just press F after selecting those 2 edges. Then I'm going to press / to get out of there, press Z to go into rendered view, and now we have the white of our eyes. And it actually is clipping a little bit there. It looks, oh no, it's not. So this material, or this plane right here, actually accidentally got the wrong material on it. I wanted to have the Lovechan face material, but it has the body material instead. So I'm just going to click on this plane right here, go to my Lovechan face material, and then click assign. And if you have any issues similar to that, make sure you select all of your faces here and make sure that each and every face is just on white pixels in your UV grid and UV layout like so. So I am now going to press / to get out of this view. Then I can actually, with all my faces selected in edit mode here, I'm going to press G+Y to move this forward. Basically until we start seeing clipping, and then I'm going to move it back a bit. So I want it to be very close, but not clipping. And then I'm going to hide overlays with Shift-Alt-C. And look at that. We have like a almost perfect eye white, which is really awesome. You can see a little bit. You like really look for it in the corners, but it's like, it's almost impossible to see. So this is a very good solution for getting an eye white. So now let's actually get our irises in here. So I'm going to click on our character model once again, push tab to go into edit mode, click on this face, shift click this face, Shift D to duplicate it. Then I'm going to press G+Y to move this in our model's head. Oh, whoopsie, I didn't separate, so I messed up there. I'm going to press Ctrl+Z to undo that, press P to separate my selection. This is why we do this. And with my newly separated piece, I'm going to double click on this and rename this new model we just duplicated and separated and call this Iris. Then making sure I'm in edit mode with all my ooh, I have the wrong model selected. Go back to object mode, select Iris, press tab to go into edit mode, press A to select all. Then I'm going to press G+Y, move that in our model's head, like so. Then I'm going to press A to select all my faces in my UV editor, push G+Y to, G+X, scooch them on over. Then I'm going to line up our UVs onto our character like so, and that looks really derpy. So this point, if you have a turnaround drawing to reference, it would be an excellent time to reference it, because that's going to be your guiding light, your North Star as to where you want to be lining up and placing your irises. It's an excellent point of reference to look to if you have one. But in my case here, I'm just going to kind of wing it because I've done this so many times. I know kind of where these go by now. And it looks kind of like that. There we go. And now we've done it. Our character now has eyes, and if that feels like a little bit too deep into your character's head, by all means, go to edit mode, select all faces, plus G+Y, move them a little bit forward. Just be careful not to have them super close to the edge of your model here, because that means by the time you're moving it around and editing it, it's going to be a huge pain in the butt because it's constantly going to be clipping with the outside of your head, which you don't want. So that's why you want to inset it at least a fair bit. it doesn't look too bad. I like that, so we'll go with that. Now I want to press tab to go back into edit mode. I'm gonna select just one of these faces. So if I go to solid view, then isolate, just selecting one of these faces on our brand new iris model, and then I'm gonna press P, separate selection. Now I'm gonna rename this iris model just for clarity's sake, iris.L. So this is her left iris, R right, but her left. Then I'm gonna select this side of the iris model. I'm gonna type iris.R. So that iris.L and iris.R are now a thing. Now I'm gonna press / to get out of that isolation, press Z to go back to rendered view. And then you can see this is looking pretty good. However, this is not actually rigged yet. So how do we do that? Well, I'm gonna press tab. So first of all, I'm gonna select my character's rig. Then I'm going to go to edit mode. Then I'm gonna press Shift+A to spawn in a brand new bone for this armature. And I'll even go to the object data properties tab right here. And I'll make a new bone collection and call this eye controllers. Then I'm going to click on this bone, go to the front orthographic view, then put this bone, scale it down, kind of line it up with our front eye, her left eye. I'm gonna go to the side view, put this in the front, rotate it -90 degrees here, so -90 degrees. This, go to the front view, line it up like that. Looking good. Then I'm going to assign this bone to our eye controllers, like so. Then I'm going to isolate this bone collections by pressing the star icon, just so we can see what we're doing a little bit easier here. Now, what I want to do is make sure I have axes enabled, so I can see if this is correctly lined up to our bone. And as we can see right here, this Z is going straight down, which we don't want. We want Z to be up. So to fix that, I'm gonna press N with my bone selected in edit mode. Then I'm gonna go to item, and where it says roll here, we wanna set this to, I think 0. Yeah, so you can use this value to change the roll of bones. And in our case here, we want this to be 0. So when we move this in pose mode, it's gonna actually move the way we want it to. So I'm gonna hide that by pressing N. Then I'm actually gonna click the front of this bone and press G+X to kind of move it to the side a little bit. Like this. Because we want this to be basically firing straight out from the position of our eye bone here. And if this is messed up, don't worry. If you start moving and you notice a lot of clipping in pose mode, you can always go back to edit this bone later. And it's really easy, so don't worry about that. So now with all that work done, I'm gonna click on my bone, press F2 to rename it, and call it I.L. So this will be our I.L bone. And we call it .L so that when we symmetrize it later, it will actually get symmetrized to the other side of our face here. So with all that being done, I'm gonna go to the bone properties tab, go to relations, parent, and set our parent to our character's head bone, because this bone needs to be a child of our head bone in order for this to animate and work properly. So I'm gonna click on parent here and search head. And in my case here, this is gonna be head X. If you have a Rigify rig, it will probably be deform spine 006 or spine 006 or some variation of spine 006. But in my case here, it's going to be head X. Now with all that done, I'm gonna press right click and then symmetrize. So now we have a head L, or excuse me, an IL bone and an IR bone. Then I'm gonna go back to object mode, click on our character, hide all the geometry except our iris geometry. Then I'm gonna click on my iris L, shift click on my iris R, and it's kind of hard to see what I'm doing here, so I'm gonna go to solid view. So click on my iris L, shift click on iris R, then shift click once again onto our armature, press Ctrl+Tab to go into pose mode, shift click on both of these bones once again. So basically we're selecting the iris L and R in object mode, selecting our armature, going to pose mode, and then selecting on these bones in pose mode. So we have both of these bones selected in pose mode. Then, after all that work, we're gonna press Ctrl+P, armature deform with empty groups. Then we're gonna go back to object mode, select iris L, go to weight paint mode. Then we're gonna go to the object data properties tab, scroll all the way down until we can find I.L. With I.L selected, we're going to go to the gradient tool, and we're going to, before we do anything, make absolutely sure we press N, go to the tool menu, go to options, and make absolutely sure auto normalize is enabled. If this is not enabled, you can be sure that this will not work properly or have weird issues like 90% of the time. Make sure this is enabled, trust me. And with the gradient tool selected here, I'm just gonna click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag until I see everything perfectly red like that. Then I'm gonna go back to object mode, click on the iris R object, go back to weight paint mode, make sure I have I.R, not I.L, I.R, because this is her right eye. Then with the gradient tool, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, making absolutely sure I have auto normalize enabled and making absolutely sure I have I.R selected as a vertex group as well. Then if I go back to object mode, now that's a lot of work. I'm going to go back to render view. I'm going to click on this bone, go into pose mode. Now, if I move these around, G plus Z, they will move around exactly as we want them to. Make sure you're using local when you're doing this, and maybe even in individual origins. Otherwise, all that work we did to make sure these bones are aligned correctly won't even matter. So now if I press G plus X, it'll move along the X axis, G plus Z, move around the Z axis, G plus Y, it'll even move in and out of our head on the Y axis, which is awesome. And we're about to reveal the rest of our model to see if this is all working exactly as we expect. But before we do that, we're going to go to object mode. We're going to hide this eye white model because it's a little bit annoying. Then we're going to select iris.L, then go to tab, press tab to go to edit mode. And then I'm going to go to vertex select by pressing 1 and go to the front orthographic view. Then I'm going to press N and make absolutely sure I have mirror X turned off. I'm going to hide this a little bit. Make sure that I have mirror X turned off. Then I'm going to box select these two vertices. Then I'm going to press GG, then to slide these down. And basically, I'm just doing this to avoid further clipping issues. I want these planes to be as small as possible. GG, slide, GG, slide. And if you have mirror X on, this just won't work at all. You're gonna get weird warping like that. You won't be able to move it at all. So make absolutely sure you have mirror X off, GG. Then go back to object mode, select this one, edit mode. Make sure mirror X is off. Select the verts you wanna move, GG. Select the mercs you want to move, GG. And just make this as small as possible. Select these verts, GG. And that's good enough. So we're going to reveal the rest of our model now by pressing Alt plus H. Now, if we unisolate our bone collection here by clicking this little star icon so it's not isolated anymore, then we select our character's head bone, click on it right here, and then start rotating it around. You can see that these bones are following along with the head bone because they are children of this head bone. Which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. And if we click on this iris L bone, for example, then press G and Z to move it up, we look up and down. If I click both of these, both look up and down. And if I click on both of these and press G plus X, we'll look side to side. So that is absolutely fantastic. It looks like we have perfect moving eyes like so. If you have clipping issues when you move your eye like this, there's a few things you can do. I usually do have clipping issues, as a matter of fact. When I do that, you can rotate this around. So say it was pointed like this bone in edit mode, and then you move it in pose mode, and it's just totally clipping when you move it to the side. That's a sign this part of your bone needs to get moved a little bit. So in my case here, it looks like if I move it to the right here, and then I go back to pose mode, it totally solves that issue. But just play around with the position of your bone, or if it's clipping just constantly, move these iris objects into your model's head by pressing G plus Y, like that. That's a good way to solve that problem. That is usually a problem you're going to have where you press G plus X and it kind of starts clipping. If you want to fix that, try moving the tail of your bone a little bit, usually along the X axis, and that will often fix your issue, along with just moving your irises into your model's head more like this. But yeah, now you're done. You can even add additional facial expressions to your model, like I'm gonna show in this example on screen right now, such as blinking expressions or tired eyes, and they'll support the transparency we just set up, and you can even animate in between these facial expressions, and they'll still support the transparency we set up, which is amazing. If you want to animate between facial expressions, I already have a tutorial on my channel on how to do that right here. And rest assured that this setup that you've just put all this hard work into will absolutely work if you follow along with that tutorial as well. So I'd highly recommend it if you want to get just the absolute most expressiveness out of your characters. And if you got stuck at any point of this process and need some help, I would highly recommend you join our public Discord server or you get my low poly course in order to get access to the private low poly Discord server where you can get priority access to me, as YouTube comments are a very bad medium to troubleshoot technical issues, unfortunately. So make sure to join my public Discord server linked below, or get my low poly course where you can get access to our private low poly community. I also just added 13 brand new and exclusive videos to the Gumroad version of the course that cover how to design your own characters, create turnaround drawings, how to color and shade your drawings, and how to create your own UV maps and textures. The price of that course is increasing very, very soon, so if you are interested in it, by all means, please click that link in the description today to support the channel tremendously and become a part of our exclusive learning community. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next video.